You alright? It's been a while. Well, it's not been for you. I've been recording a show in your eyes every week, but the last show you heard, the mouse one, I think I recorded that in 2023. It's now 2025. I'll be dead honest, it's the 30th of July 2025. And this will be going out on Monday. I can give you the exact date. Monday the 4th of August, this should be going out. We're going to look at My Cousin Vinny, Joe Pesci, Marisa Tomei. Joe Pesci is a 49-year-old man. Marisa Tomei looks about 20, 22-ish, maybe. Their fiancé, they're together. That's a question, really. Do you know what I mean? A bit odd. It's a good film. It's not a. I think it's a classic. I'll be dead honest. I think it's a classic film. And I wonder if to step away from doing just kids films, I thought maybe we'd try a film that I think everybody's seen, or maybe we could see if there's any hidden messages in there, any propaganda. And there was. I've rewatched it this morning because I made all of these notes last year, just before I did the show with History Hobos. So shout out to the History Homos. I'm on there every now and then. You can go and find me on some of their episodes. They do loads more research than I do. And moving forwards, this might be what the show becomes. It might be a Here's How 1 week. And then, because I'm going to keep going with the Here's Hows, I really like them. But the deep dive episodes, it's just because of the amount of research it takes. Not many people sign up to my Patreon, which kind of, in my eyes, funds the podcast. I don't want it to just become a proper vanity project, because now, as of now, I've run out of shows that are already recorded, that I'd recorded through lockdown and after lockdown. So this is, like I say, it's 2025 now. And maybe you'll notice a shift in my beliefs and stuff, who knows. But we'll get straight into it. I've got my notes up here, so straight away, there's a numerological sign immediately before the film starts, right? So obviously I like to, before I watch a film, I like to look at how long it's going to run for. And it's an hour and 59 minutes long, which, for those of you that don't know your maths, that's 119 minutes, which is a little bit suspicious because that's just 9/11, but inverted. A number that, even without the drop of the towers, it seems to hold an awful lot of power in the world of numbers, because it ties with like extra-dimensional entities, aliens, angels, guardian angel, things like that, you know. And it just seems to be how the elites spread their message, or how they use mathematics in order to converse with these extra-dimensional entities. It's just a number that always crops up, and it's suspicious. Maybe it's because the film reels only went to a certain amount of time. I don't know. As a side note, I also decided to look at other ITV favourites, you know, like other films you'd see on ITV2 all the time, like Liar Liar, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and neither of them have got a runtime of 119 minutes. And I was expecting them to, but that does just add to the sort of the conspiracy prestige of My Cousin Vinny, and I think, you know, it gets us off to a good start, do you know what I mean? Immediately then, we get into the opening scene now, as the camera starts, the film begins, right? We see a very, very steep hill, which if you squint, just in the right sort of way, seems to kind of resemble two very tall towers, separated by a yellow line. But maybe I'm being biased because I'd already noticed that the film was 119 minutes long, so maybe I'm just looking for 9/11 references off the bat straight away. And bearing in mind this film came out in 1992, that would put it 9 years before 9/11. But you never know, maybe they had it planned sooner, maybe, you know, maybe they pulled it forwards as well, you know, you don't know, they seem to have pulled something. The number plate needs a mention as well on the car, because it's MEA 201. Now, with Joe Pesci usually playing mafioso characters, it's easy to read this reg as a Me Too, but in an Italian sort of way, so like a Me Too, like that, you know. Then with them weird noises that Italian Americans sometimes make in films where they go, you know, like me too, oh wah, like that kind of thing, like Mario. I'm thinking Mario. That's what I'm thinking. To me, the Italian accent is the noises Mario makes in the Mario games, right? It makes a point of them focusing on it too, as well, on the car and the number plate as you see the car drive towards the camera, almost as if the message of Me Too is more important than the actors in the actual film. The plate also has a Statue of Liberty in the middle, further cementing the importance of the women's movement in film production. There is lots and lots of university merchandise, I guess you'd call it, in the back seat of the car, and it focuses on it for in kind of an uncomfortable amount of time that don't make any sense, because it doesn't feel important throughout the rest of the film. Thinking about that now, because it doesn't reference it at all really, but it just shows it, and it doesn't keep it in focus on the screen so much in that shot, but it does make sure you know that it's there. Maybe it's a way to try and trick the youth of America, or as Joe Pesci would say later in the film, the Ute of America, to believe that they want to go to university so that they can get brainwashed maybe by the billions of supposed alleged Chinese and Russian dollars that supposedly funds the American higher education system. Maybe. Who knows? We then see a sign that says "Dirt for Sale." A shop that sells second-hand bits of car tyres, and a shop selling peaches and tomatoes. The character pulls a face and then sort of laughs at it, which seems like a great way to make the viewer subconsciously agree that selling used items is bad and to be laughed at. And we shouldn't, don't be doing that. Just buy new stuff. Don't buy second-hand, because, people could make money off second-hand stuff, but you should just be buying off the big companies making new tyres and things like that. And, don't be buying like homegrown produce either. And it's a good way as well to make sure that the cinema-going public and the ITV viewers, I suppose, spend their money in all the right places. Then we see a free horse manure sign, and the characters both scoff at the idea of free items, again making sure that the viewers only want to spend money and not get or maybe provide free items, as that's clearly a bad thing to do. No, money's changing hands. That's not good for society, for the economy, for capitalism. Do you know what I mean? I'm not that I'm an anti-capitalist by no means. I make and sell stuff. I sell second-hand stuff. I'm just noticing things that I've seen in the film. You know what I mean? It's very subtle then, but a lorry driver transporting logs gets passed by the university students on the road. Now I thought maybe, just maybe, right, as a way to make the viewer see that going to university makes you better and puts you in front of people that do proper jobs. This gets more people in university potentially learning from the alleged Russian and Chinese funded textbooks, maybe lecturers and the reading lists, and it makes the American infrastructure weaker as a result, because more people are going to university and they're getting less truck drivers. Just as a thought, it's an old film. It's maybe I'm putting too much weight on the film. Who knows? There's as a side note, I can tell that this is something that I've made notes on a while ago, because I haven't thought about this stuff for a while, but it does seem to be there. I don't really watch film and TV anymore, guys. I'll be honest with you, since probably because I started making all these notes so much, but I will get back into it. Don't you worry. Also, if you're listening, it's a good time to say this. If you want more episodes, because I still put out new episodes on Patreon most weeks, patreon.com/worldaroundyou. £3 a month gets you access to all of there's got to be more than 350 bonus episodes on there, maybe close to 400 now in separate different series. You've got Truth Seeking as well. Please listen to Truth Seeking. Find at World Around You's pod. I think I'm called on Instagram. You'll find it anyway on there. Give us a follow on there. And if you're listening on Spotify, please leave a 5-star rating and maybe save the show or subscribe to the show, whatever it lets you do, because it might help me reach more people who listen to podcasts like you listen to. Anyway, that's the fucking begging out the way, I suppose. The next thing you see in the film, and I noticed this again in my run through this morning of it, you see a Confederate flag hanging from a dilapidated looking barn, but the flag isn't really flowing in the breeze. It looks like it's struggling, kind of like at half mast, and the characters then literally physically turn their back on it and drive off into the vastness of the American countryside, which seems very poignant in a way, maybe a subtle way of teaching Americans to turn their backs on their old values and their own history. It also then flashes up quite quickly saying horse feed, which is the second mention of a horse in less than 2 minutes of the film. We're less than 2 minutes of the film in as well here at this point. And that seems weird because both of them flash up, and if I hadn't paused on those frames in particular, I probably wouldn't have been able to make a note about them. So why are they flashing up the word horse? Horse. Like that, bit odd. Like, what's going on with the word horse? Maybe there's a gematria thing. Maybe let me know in the comments if what horse adds up to in gematria, maybe. We also then get our first bit of anti-dog propaganda too. So those that remember the start of the Hot Tub Time Machine. That had quite a lot of anti-dog propaganda at the start. We see a dog tethered to a house, but it's on a long lead and it walks further away from the house, symbolising the distancing of humans and dogs in a possible attempt to make people subconsciously want pets less in the future, and to make them come to terms with the government imposing bans on dog ownership, which is something that we've now experienced. Certain dog breeds have been banned. So, you know, what's considering these are notes I made over a year ago, and I was making notes like that a while ago. Not to say like, look at me, I've been vindicated. I don't know. I feel like there's a tonal shift in the shows here. I don't know. Maybe this is lazy using my old notes. I'm not sure, but I hope this is something. This sounds. I sound very unsure of myself, innit, it, with this. I suppose it's because I'm not really sure what I'm going to say, you know what I mean, in these notes. Oh, well, we'll carry on. The film then starts with a discussion about nutrition, and one of the guys says no more tuna, which seems very coincidental with how the world changed the views on how fish are caught, because they want to kill less dolphins now, don't they, but keep getting the tuna. But maybe if they still allowed fishermen, and of course, you know, fisherwomen, you know, I'm not here to ruffle any feathers, to kill the odd dolphin here and there, then maybe there'd be less predators in the oceans, and then there'd be more fish left for us to eat. Just as a thought, you know, they're saying there's not many fish left for people, but if you do start letting live the things that kill what we're competing for in the sea, which you've got to admit, I think anyone could admit, even the dolphin phobes, the dolphophobes, or whatever you'd call them, and the people that don't like killer whales, and all the people that like really are gunning for bring back harpooning, do you know, and all that sort of stuff, all them sort of people, they must be even able to admit that a dolphin is much, much better equipped at catching and killing fish than we are, because we need harpoons and nets, and you know, I imagine you can also use, if you was to scale it up a bit, you know, them fly zapper things that you have in a butcher shop or a greengrocer's. If you got a massive one of them on a big extension lead and chucked it into the sea, I imagine the salt water would help that electricity pass through and kill a good bunch of fish in the area before shorting out your generator. You just have to bring a lot of generators with you, but then because they've shorted, maybe you're allowed to then just dump them into the sea. All the fish are already dead, so what does it matter? But then, I suppose... But then again, you're taking all them fish out, so that would lower the level of the sea, but you're chucking in a few generators and batteries with it, car batteries or whatever, so that would raise up the levels of the sea, and then the environmentalists might not be happy. I'm not sure if that's a good way to go. I don't even know where I was up to here. They like to say that we overfish, but that's just how they like to blame humans for everything. They will never admit that there could be less fish in the oceans because now the predators are going unchecked. See, this is fun, this, because it's like I'm reading someone else's thoughts. Like, this shows that I was probably mental when I wrote this. I was probably a bit poorly, who knows. They discuss protein as well, saying that they can get protein from beans. And this, I did think this again this morning, this seems like a very, very early introduction into like the vegan ideology. A way to try and plant the seeds, maybe drop the breadcrumbs for the people to do their own research of, oh yeah, I heard elsewhere that beans have protein. So this skinny, gaunt-looking gentleman on TikTok telling me that I shouldn't eat meat, he might be right, you know, because I could eat beans. Which means, you know, because I can't help but think, if you are eating beans, that you need to produce a tin, you need to produce tin openers, transportation of that is probably vastly different to transporting meat, because if you think about it, you could probably make beans, let's say we start canning up beans in Brazil, right, for some, maybe it's cheaper, who knows, I'm making it up, and then you can transport those really easily from Brazil to the other side of the world, or from Australia to the other side of the world. Now, if you are going to be like with meat, odds are your meat's staying a much more local. And that maybe then, you know, maybe that's why beans are getting pushed here in My Cousin Vinny, because you can have more sort of like world trade going on. Not to mention the world trade again. It's just, I mean, like economically speaking, more people are making money if you're selling beans from one side of the world to the other than if a farmer sells his meat to a butcher down the road. Just as an idea, you know. Where were we up to? The guy fails to fill up on the slushy cup with ice, which in a roundabout way is the way of symbolising the concept of global warming as well, and there being less ice, even though I think this film may have come out before the invention of the term global warming. I think they had a different name for it at that point. I don't think they used global warming as a phrase at that point. I could be wrong. We see them discuss a tin of tuna as well, that one of the guys nicks, which is a pivotal point of the film. It seems a great way to get into people's heads as well, that eating certain foods is naughty. So now the idea of eating tuna is naughty because he's stolen the tuna, so the fish is stolen, which is something that got used a lot in the media in the UK in some ways, about people arguing over who gets to have these fish in this bit of the sea, which country owns these fish. Do you know what I mean? It's little seeds in people's imaginations and that, in people's repertoire, if you like, or not repertoire, what would be the word, in people's brains, ready to be able to be told this is a thing. They've already been kind of told it. It feels like I'm trying to analyse someone else's thoughts, though, this. I'll be honest, it feels fucking mental. This is probably one of the weirdest episodes I've ever done. It's fun, though. It's fun for me. Strangely, just in time for the world to be swept by various dieting fads and groups like Weight Watchers that shame you for eating certain some things and congratulate you for eating other certain foods. Do you know, is it like, oh, you ate ice cream? Shame on you. Get out the whipping stick. Batter him. Flog him now. Do you know what I mean? Like, get him. And then they're like, you ate celery? Well done. Well done for eating. That's people, for the audio people, because I'm hoping this will go out as a video as well. That's the fat ladies in the room clapping together. The obese people clapping and Weight Watchers. That's not them. I don't know, what would that be? Maybe masturbating or going, you ate celery. Like that. Obviously, that's a clap. Anything else would just be weird, wouldn't it? Inappropriate. But it would explain why people keep going back there. Because I've never understood it, me. Never understood it. Oh, look at me, I feel awful because I'm overweight and I feel bad about it. Not everyone does. A lot of people who are big don't care, and no one else cares. But then some people came along and went, hey, we can make some of these feel bad about themselves. We can profit off of it, and we can probably make them keep coming back, and we can get them to sort of bully themselves in front of all the other people. We can get them to weigh themselves in front of people. That's mental to me. Bizarre. Just mad. I think it's mental. I don't really agree with it, to be honest. I think it's just that, if you're big and you feel bad about it, then try and help yourself. Why would you then be like trying to get? Why would you want to go to a group of other people? Because if you look down on yourself for being big, surely you're going to look down on other people that are big, so why would you accept help from them? It just doesn't make sense to me, but maybe I think differently. Then they start to discuss the age of execution in Alabama, maybe as a way for prison owners of America to get into people's heads and make them dislike the idea of, killing children for crimes that they committed. Because it wasn't until 2005 that Alabama decided that they shouldn't execute people who committed the crimes as children. But that means, though, that does mean the prison gets a nice, malleable mind, with a much longer lifespan now, because they're not going to get electrocuted or, what else can they do? They stick them in a bath full of ice, don't they, and let them just shiver until they die, in a bath when everybody watches, and then they get them to throw like the old peaches and tomatoes that the guy down the road wasn't able to sell. They just start lobbing them into the bath, which then makes the bath water flow out, which maybe proves that it's not the ice melting that makes the bath water flow out the top of the bath, but it's actually all of the extra stuff being added into the water. Who knows? Well, I'm making that up. Who knows? But it does mean that these malleable minds, they can train them into really being really good at making license plates and wicker baskets. Do you know what I mean? And they get longer out of them in these prisons then, because they seem to use people in prisons to do I don't think you could call it forced labour, because I think they pay them, but I'm not sure. Who knows what I'm trying to say? These used to be funny. To get them to produce the products for them without having to lose good slaves to the lethal injection is the last sentence I've wrote there. This is maybe I've wrote this differently because I was planned for another show. I don't know. I feel like this is I don't know. Maybe this is shit. I really don't know. Maybe I'm just being too self-aware of what's going on here. I don't know. It's because it's not all fresh in my mind, but next time it will be. We then see the characters panic over a cop being in the vicinity of them, seemingly following them down the road, and then he doesn't have his light on, then he puts the light on there, and the guy's done nothing wrong. He starts panicking loads, teaching the viewers to be scared of the police, rather than to respect the police. Immediately, which again feeds into the prison thing. Immediately, the cop gets a shotgun out and starts threatening the driver and the passenger, now giving the viewers a real reason to be scared of the police. We then see that the fella from the shop earlier has been killed, or at least he's died in the shop that they robbed the tuna from, and we see a photographer and the police officer both looking down on the dead body, showing just how the police and the media look down on the general working man, again adding to the viewers' distrust of authority figures and their mouthpieces. Because they're the guys on the ground, and they've not got down to his level to, have a good look. They're just sort of like looking down the noses at this dead guy. The viewer knows the characters didn't kill the guy, but a sheriff says that they might get a confession, so maybe my cousin Vinny is responsible for why so many people in prison say they're innocent and that they never committed the crimes. Maybe they watched this film and got tricked into thinking that it's acceptable to be arrested for something he didn't do. We see that the character gets told he's good at he's good for confessing to a crime, and making the police officer's job easier. And he gets told it's good that he waives his rights, which seems, a mad thing to put in a film. The police officer seems happy to elect, because imagine a lot of people watch it and then they zone out, don't they? Do you know what I mean? They zone out of the film. They take in the first few minutes. They zone out. They forget the next. We're probably about 4 minutes in. They forget the next 105 minutes, and then they get the last 5 minutes then, because obviously they're watching it on ITV2, and the 119-minute film with all the advert breaks. Back when I used to watch stuff on there, going back 10 years or something, maybe longer, that film becomes 3 hours long. So you've already forgotten what happened at the beginning, but it's gotten in your brain. And the police officer seems happy to electrocute the guy over stealing a tin of fish. Again, making people connect eating animals being naughty, and also maybe getting into people's heads that possibly, maybe, not everyone who does do a crime deserves to be killed. Again, a very clever way of increasing the amount of available workers in American prisons. We then see the guy ring his mum, and he tells her that they think they're being set up as patsies, and all the police turn and stare. A way to make people scared to tell the truth, because they'll then be ridiculed by the masses. Because they have, haven't they? He's told the truth, and everyone's looked at him and gone, yeah, who do you think you are, you? Do you know what I mean? That gets in people's heads. They then they say the clan's there, and that they all know each other, and that these people are clearly being insulted. They say, you know how it is down here, and there is a big gun on the wall as well, pointing at the person on the phone, almost as if it's some sort of very clever looming threat, or maybe a way to tell you, the viewer, that there's always a gun at the back of your head if you upset the norm. The norm in this case being the collective of the police force in, did I say it was Alabama? Is this Alabama? I can't remember if it was Alabama. I think it's Alabama. There's a good chance the biggest conspiracy of the film is that they didn't have a name for it as well, and because the actor said, "My cousin Vinny," so enthusiastically that they maybe decided to go with that. I do like that. It's the only thing you take away from it. It is one of the best bits of the film, because I like when a film says the title. I like it when they say it pointlessly, but it does feel sometimes when you watch a film they didn't know what to call it. And then they were like, oh, it's about this guy's cousin called Vinny. So we'll call it My Cousin Vinny because this actor says it so... I don't know what the word would be. I've said enthusiastically a minute ago, but it's got to be another because it seems out of place when he says it, but that makes it seem like he knew that it was the title and he was excited to get to say the title. Anyway, then we've got more global warming world building, if you like, going on in the film as Joe Pesci drives into town, because we see people in coats and woolly hats, even though a couple of minutes ago they were driving in a convertible and it was clearly the summer months because they were selling fresh peaches and fresh tomatoes, but now people are in coats all of a sudden, like the weather's suddenly changed, and they're trying to push onto the viewer possibly the unpredictability of weather. Do you know what I mean? The woman with Joe says she thinks the Chinese food there will be terrible, which might be a way to tell the viewer that the Chinese don't have influence over Alabama, which may be a reason why Americans seem to always say Alabama is backwards or behind the rest of the country. But once that Hong Kong dollar reaches its peach-filled towns, they'll all change the tune. I've written there. Sorry, this is again, it's very strange to read my old notes like this. It is good though. I mean, I'm kind of enjoying this. I know what I can explain. I get to explain to you here what I think I meant there. So there's a lot of money that gets injected into America and invested by, you know, like foreign investors. It's just a normal thing, property development and that. So maybe it was just a way of saying there's none of that here yet. You know, that's maybe it's a way of the film saying the reason why this part of America is seen backwards is because it doesn't get much foreign investment. Who knows? You know, I don't know. It's just seeing what's going on in the film, innit? They're all saying that Alabama is famous for its mud, which seems like it must be steeped in nuance, almost as if there's something in the dirt, or not in the dirt, like there's something different about the ground. I think it seems like they're saying there is something in the ground that affects technology, possibly some form of deep underground military base, or maybe some form of underground crashed superior technology, but nothing seems clear yet at this point in the film. They are talking about a technological problem, though. The expert in the scene doesn't know about it, so it makes more sense that they're saying that something like a crashed alien craft could be responsible for the change in the dirt, or that there's something of value in the ground that would change how cars work. Maybe, possibly, they're discussing lithium or cobalt or something like that, a resource that we've become more open to mining to power our vehicles. You know, like as a little introduction to the idea of there's something else in the ground that we can use to power cars. The two lads from the beginning, they're now in prison, and I can't help but think there's a good possibility they made the film to try and encourage people to not leave the city that they live in, and to try and manipulate people away from moving out to the countryside and living the so-called American dream. We're now seeing that a known Italian, often associated with the mob in his acting roles, is trying to make a deal and or sort of help someone who's been wrongly accused. It makes a lot of sense that a gang of some sort, for instance the CIA, seeing as Joe Pesci in this point of the film is in all black here, would use the prison system to find itself some workers or operatives, people that feel a bit trapped, you know, and they know that they're being wronged and they've been tricked, and then the CIA could easily prey on that to use these people all whilst kind of, you know, paying off the prison guards or prison owners for going through the trouble of creating a recruitment pool for them. This even gets symbolised in the film because Joe just pays the guard physical money, cash in his hand straight there in the film, which seems, you know, it does seem to add up to that in some way. It would be good, it would be interesting if in the video version of this I could put a timer for where we are in the film time-wise, because I think we're about 6 minutes into the film here, and we are half an hour into the show. So, strap in, guys. The film also seems to be showing you that you shouldn't be trusting of family members. Like, don't trust your own family. Possibly another attack from the Russians to try and destroy the West's family values. The solicitor that they've sent, Vinny, seems to be useless in terms of law, and almost like he's unfit to help his cousin out. It mentions the son of Sam, a guy that probably didn't really exist, with a motive so unbelievable that it has to be made up, but for some reason the world eats it up. And for that you could listen to serial killers, are they really? But I have been reading, on and off, I've been reading some books recently, and one of the books I've been reading about with the serial killers, I can't remember the name, I've mentioned it in another show, and it suggests that a lot of the killers weren't who they said they were, and they were kind of names that were made up for the sake of the media, so it didn't seem like loads of people were killing people. But again, I can't remember the name of the book at the moment, but I will find it, and if you send me a message I can probably let you know. It's worth a read. Whether it's true or not, fuck those, but it's interesting. The solicitor they've sent, where am I up to? Another way, this with the Son of Sam stuff seems like it's another way to make people believe and be fearful of serial killers, but more importantly, be scared of your neighbours, because, you know, who's next door? You don't know who's next door. Think about how often you've seen your next door neighbour getting changed in the window. I've never seen that. Have you? Do you know what I mean? What are they really doing in there? There is a the characters are under a threat of death because they've gone to a neighbouring state, and now they're reminding people that your neighbours will kill you as well. So it's more fear, I don't know if you call that propaganda or but just fear mongering kind of thing. It may be trying to get people behind the idea as well of federalising the judicial system, because then the rules would be the same throughout all of the country. Because there's a point in the film where he finds out that, oh, you're a solicitor from you're a lawyer, sorry, it's American. You're a lawyer from New York, so here's the book of how we do law here. This is how the law works in Alabama, which people watching that might be like, that's dumb, that's stupid. we should have the same rules everywhere, and that gets people more open to agreeing to that, I suppose, by using that as a trope in films for misunderstandings and things like that. There seems to be something weird as well at this point. It's kind of tricky. I was struggling to understand the relationship between Aunt May and Joe Pesci's relationship. The dynamic, between their relationship. Because it feels like Joe Pesci's the same age as his cousin, even though he was nearly 50. He was 49 when the film released. And his missus in this, Marisa Tomei, she looks like she's the cousin's age, but acts like a much older woman, and with her only concern at this point in the film being Chinese food, which maybe is just to do with the sort of the 2D portrayal of women in films back then. I'm not really sure, because she seems, later in the film, spoiler alert, but later in the film she's actually quite pivotal and important in the film. So the way that they build her up so little, and give you so little about her, apart from exactly what you'd need to know for the end scene to make sense, just seems lazy, I guess. Another reference to a power source here as well, steam power. We hear a big steam whistle, so coupled with the reference to coal and oil and lithium, there's also now the mention of steam, and the characters act very aggressively towards steam power, almost to show the viewer that you shouldn't be welcoming to the concept. We should be angry at the use of steam. We don't want steam anymore. No more steam power. Steam power is bad. Steam power gets you up early in the morning, wakes you up, it's shit. You don't want steam. Because it's a steam whistle to alert, I think, the lumber mill that it's time to go to work at 5 in the morning. We then see that the locals cook with a lot of lard, yet everyone gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning to work and all seem relatively slim and healthy. Then Joe Pesci gets into some propaganda about the ongoing cholesterol problem in the country, almost using the framework of the past 15 minutes building up Alabamites, Alabamanians. Alabamanian sounds a lot better, to be backwards hillbillies, to sort of cement the idea in the viewer's head that if they don't believe in cholesterol, then they're as stupid as they believe these fictitious Alabamarians, whilst the chef just looks confused at the word cholesterol. Then they talk about grits, something that's always sounded typically American to me, but they act as if it's weird and unusual, which they're Americans in my head, so surely they should know what that is. And possibly it's a bit of, I don't know, could you say it's cultural Marxism? Would be what that is? To try and push out or propel, should I say, to try and propel the maybe cosmopolitan views of the big American cities, to try and make everything in America easy to franchise and say, oh, let's have a Starbucks. We don't want grits. We don't want black coffee. We want Starbucks. You know what I mean? We want that. We want toast. We want toasties. We don't want grits. Do you know what I mean? And then everything can become the same. And what's the word when you make everything the same? Amalgamated? No, that's not the same. That's when you mix things. Conglomerized, maybe? I'm not sure what the word is. I'm just saying big words and I don't know what they mean. But where you make everything repeated throughout, I suppose. You know, and they sell it all in branded cups and containers, and there's less competition. Now, a way of taking, North Americans away from the sacred corn that in previous episodes, as we've discussed, the natives deciphered as the chosen grain of choice from one of their gods, which I think was Quetzalcoatl, I think, was the guy that offered them the corn. I might be wrong. Then they talk a nation through its own heritage, which is weird, all whilst Joe makes a face that, in my opinion, seems to mock the dish, seems to mock the idea of eating the grits. Again, the idea of cultural Marxism seems the concept of it possibly, unless I've misunderstood it, gets pushed a little further when we see a guy with loads of Italian names mimicking the actions of a clearly American man, whilst doing it all in different attire, which is, I don't know, like to different attire to what's in the local area. It's like it's trying to blend all of these different, what are clearly different cultures within America, trying to, that's the word, amalgamate would be the right word there, trying to bring it all together as if it's this, let's just push it all together. Let's not have people that have different thoughts and enjoy different things. Let's try and make everyone want the same stuff. I imagine that makes it easier though then for people to make money, because if everyone wants the same stuff, you just need more of that same stuff. You don't need to worry about, well, if there's all these people that enjoy reading books, how are we really going to get them to watch DVDs? If we can make books seem shit by, putting in films and TV for years that the nerdy people read books and they get beaten up by the bullies. So then when the kids see this, they think, oh, if I carry books around and read books, I'm going to get beaten up by the guy that all the women in the film seem to want to have sex with. I want them women to have sex with me, so I won't read the books, but I will watch the DVD of the film, which has taken out most of the nuance and the concepts of the original book and diluted it down so that I can understand it, because it needs to be simpler now, because I don't really read books. This coming obviously from a guy who barely reads, but still, that's it's what comes across sometimes in films. Obviously, though, as well, films would want to push more films, but we're getting really distracted from the point. And my words are terrible. Words are my tool. I'm using words here to try and make money, and I can't use any of them correctly. We then see that in America, appearances are everything. The viewer's taught to judge a person in a suit as trustworthy and someone in leather as untrustworthy, where in reality I would argue it's probably a much better idea to trust a guy in a leather jacket. For example, if a guy's riding a motorbike, he's normally much sounder than a guy in a suit. Like the guy say you're walking down the street with your nan, or your nan's on her own, or your elderly auntie or whatever, your elderly mum, walking down the street on her own, and she falls over, and a guy in a suit was to go up to her. I would imagine, actually, say she's cut herself or something, I would imagine more so the guy in the suit's going to think, oh, bloody hell, I'm not going anywhere near her. I don't want to get any of that on my suit. Whereas the guy in the leather jacket, the biker guy or whatever, he's probably going to go and help her. Probably going to go and grab her. Be like, fucking hell, come here, love. Let me get you up. And maybe that's because he's nicer. Maybe that's because his coat's wipe dry. It's wipeable. It's waterproof. Whereas a suit, the blood could soak in. But I'm not saying people in suits will go and give your nan a good kicking. And I'm not saying everybody in a leather jacket won't go and rob your nan if she's on the ground. But I think it's more likely that people dressed like that are going to be sounder than people in suits. Plus, people in suits, my concept, my view of them, a lot of them are probably just coked up, like estate agents and that, hungover, pissheads. Whereas the guys in the leather jackets are probably healthier and just, nicer to be around. But I don't actually know, do you know what I mean? Even here I've made a note of saying coked up lad from a call centre, because the call centre guy will probably try and rob you in a legal way using PPI claims and some form of convoluted contractual agreement that sees you tied into an agreement to pay him a commission for the next 5 years or even the rest of his life after he's even been fired from there. Unless the company goes into some form of liquidation or bankrupts itself so that they don't have to actually do any of the things they said they were going to do. Whereas the fellow in the leather coat simply doesn't want to die or be shredded to ribbons if he falls off his motorbike. Much more trusting to trust that guy. Oh, what, you're wearing cow skin to protect yourself if you fall off a bike? How fucking dare you? Again, more sort of vegan propaganda, I suppose, in some ways. The judge tells him he should comb his hair, a way to get into people's heads that they need to conform to be taken seriously as well, or in order to be dealt with easier, which is something that they try and drill into you at school as well. Oh, you shouldn't have your hair this short, you shouldn't have your hair that long, you should brush your hair, you should do this, you should do that. Whereas I've found, personally, since I've grown my hair, which isn't like a statement thing or for style, I couldn't give a shit. I just don't like getting it cut. It feels weird, I don't like it. So I just grow it and then cut it with kitchen scissors every now and then. If you just wanted to know that, I suppose. But I've found people are actually sounder with you than if you've got a freshish haircut. I found people were quite standoffish with me and weird with me. But since I've grown my hair, people seem a lot more relaxed around me. But maybe that's just me, interpreting that way. It shows that people as well are more interested in how you answer rather than the answer you give as well. So like as in the tone you use or the way that you do it rather than the actual answer. Something that school, again, will drill into a person for well over a decade by rewarding people for filling in empty space in an exam paper, even if they get the actual answer wrong. Like how in maths, in maths you could answer a question wrong, but you could still get 2/3 of the marks if you wrote loads of numbers and like equations in the space. Even if you didn't know what you were doing, you could get a mark for doing that, for putting the right symbol in the right place or something. Which just again seems stupid to me. You also get this underlying message that you'll get punished if you try to do the right thing, as in the morally correct thing. Vinny wants to protect his cousin, yet the judge then sends him to jail because he wouldn't follow the rule that the judge seems to have made up that only exists within this specific building. So regardless of you saying this isn't true, I'm just looking after my cousin, he gets sent to jail then. And we then see that these, quote, men in black, Vinny and his missus in other words, earn money by illegal means as well in order to be able to conduct their legal actions, which is very sort of CIA, really, like looking to like Barry Seal and that. You could even just watch the Tom Cruise film, I think it was, about Barry Seal. That's worth a watch. That conveys what I'm getting across there. They play pool and illegally gamble against others in order to get the funds to fund the legal case so that they can get what's his name? Vinny, of course, his name's Vinny. To get Vinny out of jail so that he can continue doing the representation in court. It's a very subtle nod, very subtle, really, to how the CIA seems to conduct itself in the real world. So, and because they're dressed in black as well with it, and yeah, they're out-of-towners, and they've got a certain way about them, and a special car that stands out against everybody else's cars, looks more modern. It's just the little bits like that. I think we just got introduced to, at this point, I think we learn Vinny's missus' name, which is Lisa. Which could be a bit of sexism to make the viewer think a woman isn't important enough to be explained or even introduced, but maybe that's just we didn't need to know a name, maybe. I could argue as well, though, because Vinny's cousins, I don't know if you get to know the name of them maybe once, and the whole film, in a way, is about them, but the whole film shows Vinny all the way through. Obviously, he's in the name, the title, Vinny, so it's about Vinny, it's about my cousin Vinny, but the whole story revolves around these two lads, but you don't really learn much about the lads. We then see that this CIA operative will deal with known criminals and violent people in order to extort their money from them. We then see Joe, he sees a guy in a neck brace and he tries to see if he can acquire him as an asset as well, because he's like, oh, did you fall at someone else's house or at yours? Was you working? You know, and questions like that to try and learn information about him to see if he can use him for him to make money and for him to be able to further himself. Which, but the guy declines in the neck brace. Then he even tries again to see if he can use him. And the CIA representatives start to flirt with each other over a non-existent spanner, whilst also mentioning this imaginary spanner is used by NASA. So during a flight of fancy, they also use NASA as a frame of reference, which could be, maybe, possibly, why a lot of people now don't trust NASA and don't believe in NASA and think that what NASA do is lies because they've got this spanner that doesn't exist. It might be a real spanner, but they're talking about it as if it's in the hand. It's make-believe, it's role-play. It's not a real spanner. You can't see the spanner. There's no spanner in the film. I don't think you see a single spanner, wrench, or set of pliers even, or maybe even not even a hammer in the film. No tools. Very, very few tools in My Cousin Vinny. And it could be argued that then by going, this isn't real, and they're talking about NASA, it gets that seed of doubt in people's heads about the moon and about space and about the space station and things like that. And maybe that's where that conspiracy comes from, just from little seeds being dropped in people's heads like that. Now, we see that Joe is very willing to adapt to a brand new reality, which is our first possible hint of the film trying to teach a form of, let's call them demonic entities or extra-dimensional creatures about its new world, which seems to be a common theme in a lot of films. Like, think back to the My Little Mermaid, is it called? The Little Mermaid? Lisa tells him the tap's broken, and Vinny knows the tap isn't broken, yet he still agrees with her that the tap is broken. He's reading a rule book at the time that teaches him how to literally conduct himself in this new world he's found himself in, which, again, suspicious. It's weird to me. It's really weird to me that they keep bringing in these ideas of, in the films, this is a new world. Here you go. Here's how you interact in this new world for the character. It's just bizarre. Really weird. We start to see again as well here that Vinny don't really understand the world, and it's starting to become clearer that maybe this film is a playbook of sorts for people that have possibly shifted realities, maybe, or swapped dimensions and are aware of it. It seems like it's a film made by people that have seen a courtroom drama for people that have never seen a courtroom drama. That's how it feels. It feels, because I've never really watched a courtroom drama. Not really. And I can imagine that this is a really watered down version of that, made like funny and to take the piss out of. Maybe it's just the satire of courtroom dramas, because I imagine they're quite cheap to make, aren't they? Because you've just got one set. You don't have to have all different sets for it, really. You just film it all in there. Makes it cheaper on production, I suppose. Lisa seems to be compiling evidence on Vinny as well, taking his photograph all the time, almost like she's Vinny's handler. Maybe Vinny represents a CIA asset and Lisa's the actual CIA operative. In this scene, she's in a bright red dress too, which is another sort of like huge part of American culture, because like they mentioned in The Matrix, but a woman in red, I think, is usually a symbol of the end of the world, I think, because of, fuck me, what's she called? The Scarlet something or other, for all the Jack Parsons stuff we looked into a couple of years ago. Possibly the Whore of Babylon, possibly a representation of the Whore of Babylon, because she is positioning her hand to show off her rings, and she's got a gold chain holding a bag over her shoulder. So there's all little subtle things there just to whet the appetites of conspiracy theorists, I suppose. We then see loads of pigs in the middle of the night making squealing noises, and Joe keeps pulling faces at them, which is a pig farm. And the only reason you have a pig farm is to either make cheap leather for car seats and, like maybe gimp masks. I imagine you could make a good gimp mask out of pig leather. Plus, I imagine it's a good idea to make gimp masks out of pig leather, because you'd be like, you're wearing fucking pig leather, you dirty little gimp. Do you know what I mean? Really, like, demeans the people further. But it's, after flashes of the word pig as well, we see that this guy's not happy with the idea of pigs, and it's another subtle way to try and turn people away from eating meat. Viewers are going to associate Vinny's grimace with pork and maybe decide that they'll eat beans in the future for the protein, because they heard that earlier on in the film, and now their brain's putting all these things together for them without them even knowing. Then we see what conformists would always say. If this was a conspiracy, we'd have to have all these people tell the lie. And that's a way to turn people away from the idea that conspiracy theories could exist, that they could be true. Even though many would argue over the last quarter of the 20th century was very much the USA's golden age of conspiracy. Do you know, like the even longer than the 25th, like the last quarter. Let's say from the 60s, the 1960s to 2000, fucking huge. That was probably the age of the American conspiracy, really. Think about all the conspiracy theories that are big and known. Obviously, they've been around a long time, so you can find out about them and know about them, but a lot of it seems to stem from that time period. So, and that's a line that's constantly fed to people, that if this was a conspiracy, all of these people would have to lie. And we know that compartmentalism exists. We know that people can compartmentalize entire businesses, because that's like saying, well, so the guy that answers the door at reception, the security guard there, that's like believing that he knows what the CEO had for dinner. It doesn't add up. But and they use that same trope, that same thing to tell people when they say, the elite paedophiles, lizard people, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, Stargates, and 9/11. Do you know what I mean? Everyone would have to know about it. Everyone would have to hide the lie. Oh, not really. No. Everyone could think they're working towards one thing, and then they just use one guy, and they're like, look, it's your job to derail all this. And then there's another group of people that, like, when he goes to derail all that, when he goes to plant the bombs in the concrete structures underneath in Oklahoma or whatever, and he goes and do that, what we'll be doing is we'll be detonating the bombs that we've already put in the building, but he won't know that. Do you know what I mean? Which seems to be what some people believe happened with the Timothy McVeigh stuff and things like that. But and at this point, you got to remember, in the film, 9/11's only about 9 years away, so they're getting the idea of conspiracies aren't real, preparing people, But I don't know how long it takes to make a film, and I don't know how long it takes to plan, the potential destruction of 3 buildings. Was it 4 buildings? So I don't know if there is a crossover. I don't have a clue. I'm just pointing out things that I've noticed in the film. In the background, a random handwritten no smoking sign. It's almost out of sight, and they only flash up temporarily, which seems like the perfect way to subliminally message to people to not smoke and to try and increase anxiety amongst the population by, having them not smoking. Because I think there does seem to be a correlation between the decline of cigarette smoke in people's lungs and the rise of mental health and anxiety, things like that. It almost seems as if when people were just smoking and not being told all these things are going to kill you, some reason it seems like people were a lot calmer, maybe, but maybe it's just the rose-tinted eyes, the rose-tinted vision of my youth, of being a kid. You don't think about that, you don't see it, maybe you just get older and you realise, who knows, I'm not sure. But it could also be a fantastic way to advertise the idea of smoking, because you see in the background no smoking. That makes you immediately think of cigarettes. You're not thinking about smoking pork, are you? Especially with the previous scene where all the pigs were screaming, you know what I mean? You're not thinking about smoky bacon then. You're thinking about fucking, having a fag on the go and like that, do you know what I mean? So maybe Big Chemo could have lobbied or funded the film a little so that they could sell more cancer-fighting treatments in the future, just as a way of, we'll tell them we don't want them smoking, but we do because we want to sell more chemo chemicals in the future to the smokers. Just a thought, just an idea, probably not true, who knows. Vinny calls the court process a magic trick. It's an illusion, he says, maybe a bit of a double bluff. Because in a courtroom, you get a lot of people partaking in seemingly ritualistic behaviour of standing and sitting, so maybe there could be some magical element that gets overlooked in your regular courts in the real world. From the way the arrested lad talks about Vinny, it makes him seem autistic of some sort, because he has this sort of mythical understanding of magical tricks and illusions and things that he's never performed himself, but he can just take it apart in his brain and see how it's done. And then we see the lights go out briefly, and they flicker for what could have been readying people for more blackouts. But what if it's to tell us that when countries have experienced power outages, it's because somewhere in the country they're having to divert power, enough power, to maybe kill something very big and something very evil. In this case, a prisoner, but maybe a massive monster. Like think like the angels sort of thing in Evangelion. Like they have to reroute power to order not to like power up the suits. Do you know, like that? And it's just as a we'll never know what they could be killing with a city's worth of electricity, but it must be something dangerous if the town is willing to cut off the televisions and have no adverts for an evening, and then they can, turn the tellies back on and the adverts can resume. Because that would mean the advertisers would have to be in on it, wouldn't it? Nothing's more important in the world than the movement of money, so it seems, someone would have to be like, look, you're not going to be able to advertise your tampons for a little bit, because we're going to have to reroute all the power from the city into this machine that we're going to fire at this invisible creature in the sky with this invisible beam so no one panics, and then that'll die. Then it's going to take a little while to get the city going again, but it'll be fine because we're going to put the backup generators on, and people won't notice that all the power's out, because we'll tell them that the street lights are out, and we'll reroute the things like that. Maybe that's why traffic lights go out as well at night time sometimes around cities, because they're using the electricity for something else underground. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it's just the bulbs keep going out and they all go out at the same time for some reason, which has got to make you think. There's some. I'm very suspicious of traffic lights, I'll be honest, because I noticed years ago that they were travelling. The people, as I was travelling round, they kept working on traffic lights and swapping out the big ones with the three lights attached. They were swapping that out for modular sections of traffic light, and I find that really suspicious. Plus, I think it's a dumb idea to change all the bulbs of something at once, because if you do that, odds are surely that them bulbs are all going to run out at a similar time. So surely you just want to stagger them, put bulbs in, and then after 2 years come and change a couple of them, so that, because you don't want all the bulbs going out at once, you want at least the red or the green to work, don't you? It's no good if the orange is going to work all the time, because you don't know what direction it's just gone in. But if you can see the red light and then the red light's not on anymore, oh fuck me, it's orange or green. If you can see the green light and then you can't see the green light and then you see the green light again, you think, oh fuck me, when it's not on green it's on red. So the idea that they change that just seems odd. But because I think I've seen more traffic lights out since I noticed they changed all the traffic lights as well to this other system. Well, not even the system, just hardware, would you call it? The casings, newer casings, I don't know. I've lost myself now in the notes, guys. The pool player from earlier, he tries to scam Vinny in return for his promise of violence, because Vinny said, what about I fucking cave your head in and then you give me that $200, because you're not going to, you're saying you'll fight me, you'll cave my head in, or I can have the $200, or I'll take the money, thank you, or I'll just cave your head in and take it. But Vinny knows about pretending about amounts of money, which seems like a very hand-fisted way to really show the reader that this fella in all black that rolled into town is actually some form of allegorical, allegorical character, to represent a CIA operation, possibly. He spends his nights reading the tome of Alabama justice, so he's learning the local culture, trying to find a way to manipulate it and gain power in the community, just like how you'd imagine a CIA operative to function in the field when destabilising a nation. We keep seeing different sounds disrupt the operatives too at night time. Sounds, right, they're just vibrations, and a possible good way of trying to illustrate the way that different vibrational frequencies can affect the well-being of a person. And at this point, Vinny and Lisa are starting to go mad from the lack of sleep, starting to bicker at each other, and they're constantly getting woken up, and that almost like they're getting experimented on each night. The town gives the feel of being one big experiment as well, because it's the middle of the night and a cargo train is relentlessly hammering its horn through the town, almost in an attempt to wake people up. And as we learnt from watching the Punisher series on Netflix, which we haven't done collectively, but I assume you all have because I've watched it, if you instill a routine in a person, they become much easier to manipulate. So maybe by having these crazy sounds all over the place, the steam horn going off at 5 in the morning and the train going past 10 past 4 every morning, making loads of noise and wrecking the buildings and things like that, you're able to weaken these people sort of psychologically and break them down and make them easier to control. As a population as a whole, I suppose. The local residents would be so used to it, they're not going to notice it. Like when people live under a plane, what's it called, where planes go to land, the airspace just before that. You ever visited like an auntie or something and she lives next to the runway and you're like, fucking hell, I can't hear a word you're saying, and they're like, what do you mean? Because they're just deaf to the noise of the planes at that point. They're just used to it. You could do that with the trains, and then the trains could be coming through going firing fucking rings of mad noise into people's heads just to make them think, fucking hell, I don't want to buy pork anymore. We should have our own law system. Do you know what I mean? Just getting all them things into people's heads. Mental when you think about it like that. And the other example, I lived next to a train station in it and for a while, and the tannoy system, you'd learn the routes of a train that you'd never been on, and you'd memorise it because you're hearing it all the time, and you don't even notice that you're hearing it, but then when you do hear it, you know what they're about to say next because you've heard it so often. So think about that. If they're chanting Piccadilly, Victoria, Altrincham, Stockport, Leeds, York, Liverpool Street Station, Liverpool, like that, you learn all them words. If they were just slipping somewhere into there, say they went Leeds, York, Liverpool Street Station, finger your mum in her sleep, blame it on the dog, Liverpool, Everton, football ground, Old Trafford, you've noticed the trains took a wrong turn, Glasgow, kill your dogs, you no longer need dogs, Edinburgh, like that. And we've changed the platform now to platform number 2, like that. And if they're doing that every day, you're going to go and try and slip your mum one in the night thinking, why am I doing this? And you're going to get rid of your dog because you've been told to by the man at the train station through your bedroom window. They say that the train comes through at 5 a.m, which is the same as the steam whistle from the lumber yard. So there's signs of an experiment going on in the area, because we know that the steam noise, that noise is the lumber yard, right? But this guy now is saying it's the train. I don't. It's not a sort of like a hidden message of the film, but I reckon if you went somewhere new for a couple of weeks and really paid attention, you probably would hear repeating whistles, sirens, klaxons that the locals are just deaf to. Like I said, when people live under the flight path of a runway, I think flight path might be the word I was looking for before. There's some sub story now in the film and a bit of filler, which we don't want to stick and focus on too much. But then we see that Vinny's going hunting, and it's yet more propaganda to demonise killing animals, because Lisa starts kicking off with him. So now the viewer's going to associate pork and now hunting as well as a negative thing, because the pretty woman on the screen is angry about it, and no one wants to anger a pretty woman. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's she's a good-looking woman. You don't want to see her angry with you. So you think, bloody hell, maybe I won't shoot a deer. Maybe I won't make friends with this, with a solicitor, with someone who's higher in society, and help myself have a better group of people around me, because they say that, the 6 people that you speak to the most are what you end up becoming yourself in terms of like societal status. So if you start introducing newer people and new ideas into your life, like hunting and things like that, higher class activities, she's talking them down here, and they're trying to get the sort of, is the term dog whistling for the vegans to get them on board? Like, yeah, don't shoot ducks, don't kill ducks, like that. It's awful when you're going out, you go past the bank and all these vegans are there, all fucking, cheekbones poking out from under their eyes, being like, don't kill the pigs. Yeah, it's fucking, behave, just fucking go about your day, mate, go, you know what I mean? But they get it into the films, don't they? And maybe that's where vegans are going wrong. They never seem to get many attractive people campaigning for it. They always look a bit odd. Which might be, that's my personal opinion, do you know what I mean? Which, it's a subjective thing, but you don't see many of them, and I've had messages of fucking hundreds, maybe thousands over the years, giving me shit, calling me a psychopath. I get some sound ones as well, don't get me wrong, I know you're out there, some of yous are vegans, and you like me stuff, you find it funny, you enjoy me humour, you'd never buy it because it goes against your beliefs. That's fine. I don't care about your beliefs, it doesn't bother me. But what I don't like is all the ones that message me saying, you should die, you should fucking do yourself in, you're a monster. I'm not a monster. I'm an idiot. Yeah, fine. I'm thick. But I'm not a monster. I just like chopping up dead rats. Do you know what I mean? And then they don't like that answer. They think there's something wrong with me for saying that. And then they're like, you need to go to a therapist. And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm sound. What would a therapist say? Sit down with a therapist. Why are you here? Keep cutting up dead rats. Why'd you do that? It's my job. Get a new job. Well, they wouldn't say that though, would they? They'd take like 13 weeks to tell me that probably, and then try and make me feel like there's something wrong with me because I'm shaming myself. Like Weight Watchers, essentially. Then you even got this anti-taxidermy propaganda in there as well, because now Lisa's disgusted by this other solicitor having stuffed heads on his wall, and there are a few films where they try to make people dislike taxidermy, and that does, in some ways always feel like a bit of a personal attack in a way. Like these filmmakers are trying to take food off my table, do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they can make a film that, makes millions of dollars for them, and, a disproportionate amount of money for everybody involved. A lot of the people who do like the hard work in there, they probably get a pittance compared to the actors, because the actors bring in the money, if you like. But then they're like, yeah, taxidermists, though. Fuck them guys. That's annoying. Not many times I'm watching something where I feel personally attacked. I'm a white guy, so that doesn't really happen in films to me. So maybe that's where I could, maybe empathise with other people, but that sounds a bit ridiculous to say, doesn't it? Where the other films are being, taking the piss out of people, and people are like, I don't like this. I mean, people might not like the stuff I said about Weight Watchers before, but who knows? Obviously, I'm taking the piss there. I know it's not always clear by my tone. I don't want people come, because I imagine if, the vegans are going to be like, yeah, we'll latch on to that. Do you know what I mean? It seems it's... Well, think about it though, just not to linger on it, but it is unusual, isn't it, for a specific profession to get ridiculed so much, because think about what they do make films about. They make films about hitmen and make you love them. The idea that these people are going about, travelling the world, slaughtering people for money. And you love them by the end of it. Look at Deadpool. Look at The Hitman's Bodyguard. Things like that, do you know what I mean? Like, you like the character. It's mental that you can have that. But then the idea, you talk about taxidermy in a film and they're like, no, don't include that, that's naughty, that's horrible. It's fucking, they did it in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as well, if you remember. It's just mad that a hitman or a mafia guy, look at like the Jeffrey Dahmer TV show with that fella from American Horror Story. People loved that. People thought, and they were like, oh, poor Jeffrey, things like that. Yeah, the taxidermy side of it, they were like, it's fucking weird him doing that, isn't it? The Norman Bates program, Norman Bates isn't a real man, doesn't exist, the guy from Psycho, not real. But by having the taxidermy in there, they're like, taxidermy's weird, isn't it? Taxidermy's mental. And then But look at him, poor lovable Norman. Do you know what I mean? It's just fucking weird. Now, she's against shooting a deer, an animal that provides a very cool trophy. Nice, a lovely rack, you know, with the antlers and that. Nice tasting food as well. Venison's quite nice. Plus, you know, it helps pass the time. It's something to do, you know, rather than talking about your own death or thinking about killing yourself and that. Something to shake the darkness away, I suppose. Now, she's describing the deer as sweet and harmless, but that's not true. Those of you that probably listen to Truth Seeking more know that I wrote some form of weird manifesto when I went mental years ago, and I actually did a lot of research into how many animals kill people and that, and it was like a mock manifesto, a satirical one. I don't think it'll ever get released, but we reference it sometimes in Truth Seeking. Deer tend to contend for the number one spot for most dangerous animal in the UK. Usually you only get beaten by cows. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure deer kill more people in the UK than sharks, like each year, than sharks ever have worldwide, ever. Like in 2023, I think there was around a dozen shark-related deaths in the world. And then the amount of people that would be killed by a deer swerving out the way of a deer, running a deer over, being impaled on its antlers, and then the deer marches round showing you off to all of the lady deer going, look what I did, guys. Look at this. I killed him. He was going to kill us. And all the lady deers are like, ooh, what a man, what a man. And then all the male deer get jealous in it and start rucking with him and trying to stab the guy and being like, look, I finished him off though. And all the other women deer are like, yeah, you did, Gary, you got him there, Gary. Oh, bloody hell, Jeff didn't do a very good job, did he? Jeff just tortured him. Gary came and killed him because Jeff didn't have the balls. Now, all of a sudden, Gary's got this fucking harem of deer, this flock of deer, this herd of deer, family of lady deer following him round. Poor Jeff. Jeff was the one that went out of his way to try and keep them safe from the poacher. Now Jeff's dying lonely, wanking himself in a cave. I don't know how a deer masturbates. I imagine with its tongue or its ears or something. Just, you know, fucks its own ear hole or something. You shouldn't have to go through that just because they don't want taxidermy in films. It's fucking... Just, you know, I mean, this isn't something to get angry about, but... Yeah, back to the film. Then they're spending more time on turning people against taxidermy and hunting in this scene than we've spent a single cell scene or a courtroom scene so far at this point in the film, which surely that's propaganda. Surely that is trying to manipulate a person's thoughts. If you're going to spend a good 4 minutes talking about the downside of hunting and taxidermy in a film that's about a guy being in prison, and you're doing that's longer than what you've spent in a scene in a cell, that's a bit weird, isn't it? And it's sandwiched in probably going to be one of the scenes in the film that doesn't mean anything, if that makes sense. So one of the sections of the film where the thing just before it doesn't tell you much of the story, the thing after it doesn't tell you much of the story, and that's just in the middle, which seems to be typical in films, that's where they'll pop in here's the little bit to get in your brain. They're sort of like, if it was music, here's the earworm, so that we can sell the single later on. But instead here's the anti-taxidermy worm to go in your head, so taxidermists might not make as much money later on. And here's some stuff about going in a car, and you're like, what the fuck's going on here? In a way, it teaches modern women of the time as well to talk down to their significant other. He's asked for advice and he gets shot down by Lisa, who implies nobody cares about his trousers just because she wants people to not kill deer. Which, you know, like the phrase, the men wear the trousers and stuff like that, that's another maybe like pro-woman thing or anti-man thing, however you want to look at it, by getting that in there, because now you've got this strong woman talking a man down for trying to take up a new hobby, trying to make friends as well. He's trying to make friends with this other solicitor, and she doesn't like that. She's telling him off for that. No, you're wrong for that. Be lonely. Do you know what I mean? And now, fucking 30 years later, what's in the news all the time? Male loneliness epidemic. So, you know, what makes it stranger about all the hunting nonsense is that in the film we don't see any hunting at all. He goes off on a day out with the solicitor, wastes a day with him, and we don't see any hunting or anything like that. Now, again, Lisa is having a go at Vinny again for not being knowledgeable. She knew about this disclosure and disclosure, in inverted commas, I suppose. And this gets the word disclosure into the zeitgeist at a time as well. But this is a long time before Stephen Greer, as far as I'm aware, but it gets it out there, the idea of disclosure. And you should know about disclosure, and disclosure's a thing, and you should be aware of disclosure. Disclosure's in this book if you look for disclosure. It gets mentioned a lot. Obviously, disclosure, for those of you that don't know, was the proposed thing that was supposed to happen, weirdly, I think not longer after 9/11, where they were going to tell the world about the aliens that were coming. And I don't know if you've been seeing on social media, apparently there's supposed to be an alien mothership headed for the Earth, and scientists are like, oh, they're going to kill us all. And then there's other scientists going, I think it's just a meteorite that's probably going to miss us by about 150 light years, 150 million light years or something. So two very different worries there. I mean, the first worry is the telescopes they're using. That's two very different measurements. It's coming straight for us. And they've got it's going to hit 150 million light years away from us. I mean, I find it mental, though, is the idea that you could even predict, oh, that's coming straight for us. Like, what the fuck are you on about? How can it be? Because if that's moving in a straight line, we're also moving in a straight line, and we're spinning round in a circle, like in a big ellipses, what do you call it, like an oval. So you don't know if it's coming straight for us. It could be coming kind of towards this area of space, but surely if it is that far away, that it's travelling that fast and it's going to be here in November, then it's heading towards all of this bit of space. Maybe it's aiming for something past us. Maybe he's really got it in for Mars. You don't know. This is what's odd about stuff like that. We then see the bad guy seem excited about an old lady wanting to have the two lads electrocuted, which again gets more propaganda against the death penalty, because the character that we're supposed to dislike, which is the prosecution solicitor, he gets really giddy when this old lady says that she wants these guys to be electrocuted. So because he's the bad guy, we look at that and we're like, we don't want what the bad guy wants, so we're thinking we don't want the death penalty, which then means more people are alive in prisons, which means more people in the prisons are working for a very small amount of financial gain. Now, we learn that they use the names of famous actors to obscure other people so that they can operate under the radar in terms of like CIA people. Vinny says that a famous actor was called Vinny Gambini, so they won't find a record of the judicial Vinny because of that. Maybe a little nod towards the existence of life actors. If you remember the life actors episode, which is going back quite a few years, that's the concept that there's, I think it was it 47 real people that exist in the world that are on TV and that, and they just all wear different skin suits, and they're all different people, they all each other, but realistically, like thousands of skin suits which are worn by 40 odd people, which is a hell of a conspiracy to look into. Like, start with my episode and then look into other things, I suppose. Or maybe when a prominent actor or musician comes to power, maybe they then assign them a name that is useful to have all over the media and internet. This could explain why people think Elvis went to work for the CIA. Maybe they made Elvis Presley famous whilst another Elvis Presley went around committing war crimes or treasonous acts, all under the illusion of dispensing freedom in the name of America. I actually woke up last night about 4 o'clock in the morning with the big thought in my head that what if Elvis was the Antichrist? Because you've got Elvis, like, maybe because you like the Antichrist, the means the in some languages, and then you've got VIS, which is sixes. So the sixes, like, so that could mean the 3 6s, and that'd be Elvis, wouldn't it? Just as a little thought for you to leave festering in your brain there. Now, he claims to have a different name, a stage name, which he uses to have an effect on the legal world, which now the legal world is now a different world to the world he knows and the world that he's operating in at the moment, which is different to the world he usually operates in terms of judicial ways and legalities, because he's working in the Alabama legal world, not in the New York legal world. But there's also the idea of the world stage, and there's the idea of the world as a whole as well. And at the same time, he also swipes all the chess off the table to show how these fake names, to show how they would use these fake names, I suppose I should say, so that you can't guess the move they're going to make, and then it disrupts the so-called, quote, game. My idea then sort of got solidified a little, that they take famous people names and use them to commit unlawful and unethical activities, because the name Vinny used is a very famous lawyer from New York. And it's just a little something to be thinking about, I suppose. We then see that Lisa has managed to provide Vinny with technology for him to accomplish his dodgy tasks. We then see a little bit more manipulation to break up the common family unit as well, because we see that Vinny's been putting career over his relationship, promising a marriage when he wins his first case, but that's taken 10 years so far. And we also hear Lisa talk about her biological clock, but she looks at least half of Pesci's age. So it does seem like they're trying to then encourage younger people to have families. Something that did happen and apparently started to happen more. Lots of women having kids that they can't afford, so they lean on the government and then become dependent on the government to survive and keep their children as close to healthy as what they can. And that's obviously women in a much worse state than Marisa Tomei will probably look at, and they'll look at her and panic, thinking, oh my God, I must be older than her, and she's worried about her womb. I should pop out a couple kids right now and worry about a house and a career and being able to afford looking after them later. Or even just being able to teach them stuff. That's what I think. I know some people, they'll have a kid at 16 and that kid's fine, but in my eyes, that's what? How do you help the kid? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I couldn't do it myself. That's why I haven't. But it's nothing to do with no one really wanting to have it away with me at that age. Do you know what I mean? Because I was a weird cunt, which I am. No, I'm a weird cunt now. I'm cutting up dead rats and that, and I used to talk about all this stuff back then. So no one wants to hear this back then. Now we see how the women's feelings are more important than the man that she's living with. And we then see Lisa almost concede defeat, and then we're confronted with a taxidermy deer trophy, a perfectly placed little emotional callback to connect the feeling of explicit anger earlier with the woman now just admitting she was wrong. The subliminal takeaway from the scene is for a lady to not concede being wrong. We then see Vinny use a revolver to scare away a noise in the woods, which just trivialises the use of guns and showing a gun like it did earlier on the poster, but yet in another way that makes them seem less intimidating. We get shown a shop that's closed for flu, and the only other shop in town is a second-hand shop, which is a little way to make people want to welcome the superstores into their towns. Because now think about the start of the film, where all the second-hand stuff was getting laughed at and sort of like poked fun at. And now they're having to use a second-hand shop, which is really convenient because it's open, but the actual suit that he gets looks ridiculous and people don't like it, and he gets made fun of by the judge for it. So that would put people off again, more overtly rather than covertly. It puts them off the idea of buying something from a second-hand shop. Whereas then people would be thinking, well, if they had a Tesco Express, or it was open till 11 o'clock at night, or they had like the big Asda or something there, they'd be able to just nip in and get something out of George, and they'd have a nice, it'd be cheap, but it'd be affordable, we'd say, suit that they could go and wear to court, and that'd be fine. But they don't have that. They've got independently owned stores, which happen to be closed because everyone in there is ill. So, it just gets a little bit of, we want big shops, you know what I mean, rather than people being self-employed and that. Vinny goes on to explain how having only one shop and no 1 hour cleaning services is detrimental to the area. Viewers are going to see this and can't help but agree. In this circumstance, a franchise dry cleaners or a superstore would be an absolute godsend for Vinny, easing the way to a world full of soulless shops. We see the jury get exactly the jury get told exactly what they want to perceive in the future, I suppose, with it's sort of ironic because it's in a film, and that's because that's what a lot of films do. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say. The jury, so the prosecution tells the jury exactly what they're about to witness, right? And the concept of these shows that I'm doing for you here, the hidden messages, is the idea that films are actually telling the viewers, in this case the jury, you'd be the jury watching My Cousin Vinny, telling you what you're about to see in the world, if you like, with the idea of programming your brain kind of thing and easing you into new ideas that are about to approach your life. We then see that the public defendant has got a speech impediment, the other defending lawyer, the solicitor. which is again trying to build a distrust in public defenders, aka free solicitors, the only people that stand between many people and a lifetime of making wicker baskets and number plates for these prisons. And representations of this will make people resent them and scared of using them and think they're useless. It's also possibly the second example of something being free being looked down on, which is another little capitalist push for people to spend money. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, you get what you pay for. But sometimes someone's giving away a table because they're getting a new table. That table's fine that they've been using. They're making more money. They fancy a better table. They're giving this one away to someone who needs a table. You need a table. You have that free table. It's a perfectly good table. It works. Just like a public defendant, I suppose. Now, they drag this on and they show lots of faces being disgusted at a man who's working whilst he's, I would say, I guess you'd call him disabled because he struggles to speak and his job is speaking. Again, tricking people watching the film into believing that if you're disabled you should stay at home and you should rely on the government rather than earn your own money or help others, and that seems quite obvious because everyone looks uncomfortable and they're like, oh, and it's just a bit of a snidey thing in the film, but maybe it's more of a thing at a time, I'm not sure. All the evidence is based solely on witness testimony, but if they had CCTV and security footage, all of this could have been avoided. It would be interesting as well to see how many films came out before CCTV was so widely accepted that revolved around people being wrongly accused of crimes or some form of infidelity, because that would mean that the population was primed to be scared of and they want to be looking for a resolution, I suppose, to this, what would you call it, like an overinflated issue and a problem that doesn't quite exist, but now it's been made to seem like it's a problem. No, but all these people are being arrested for crimes that they didn't do. But if we had CCTV everywhere, you could you could see that this person wasn't that person, it was someone else. Do you know what I mean? So that solution, obviously, would be widespread surveillance, and that's something that would go on to help imprison loads more people to become workers in American prisons later down the line, but that's besides the point. We then see a bit of classism and another bit of what I think you could class as cultural Marxism, or at least wanting to make everybody the same. Maybe I have misinterpreted what cultural Marxism is, but in modern days they do this with programs like Love Island, innit? I think but more they're just in this time, I suppose, when they made this, they're just starting out, and basically they make the viewer feel weird or bad for speaking with an accent and using colloquialisms or having a dialect different to the hierarchical seniors. So in the film, what you see is Vinny says, you see these couple of utes like that, and the judge is like, what's that word you used? What does that mean? And he's like, well, I'm sorry. Vinny doesn't have a clue because he's just speaking in his own voice, which is something that I've experienced because people punish you for that, and it would happen. People laugh at you, they don't like your accent, they pick up on your accent loads, and you say words like for me, like words like ginnel, do you know what I mean? Like, which means the little alleyway between shops or something like that, or there's loads of little words in that I'll use and people don't know what that means, and you're like, oh, like mither. Oh, sorry, I don't want to mither you. You don't want to what me? You're like, you what? What do you mean? I don't want to what you? What does that mean? No, I don't want to mither you. Sorry to mither you, but what's mither? What you doing? It's like, and then you got to try and think of the word. Oh, bother. I'm very sorry to bother you, sir. Do you know what I mean? And it tries to make you speak. Society then tries to make everybody speak in this certain way, even though people speak in different ways. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit self-centered there. I don't know. Maybe. We now see that Vinny's learnt the culture of his victims, and he's able to weaponise it against them. So now dismantling a man's testimony with his newly found knowledge of grits, the corn-based breakfast staple of Alabama. This shows us exactly how the factions have dismantled and unsettled different areas. Like when they used vampires to upset some people in a war by using their understanding of local mythology against them, which again is something that I think we covered in Truth Seeking years ago, but there was, just as a quick aside, there was a war, I can't remember where, but the Americans they're really worried about these vampires. So if we drain the blood out of some of our own people that have died and some of the other people that we find dead or that we've shot or killed, then we can make them think that there's a vampire in the area, and people will be a bit more dubious about going out and fighting, which is something that they seem to have tried from stuff I've read on the internet. Now, Vinny now takes advantage of their ego and their local pride to trick him into doing and saying exactly what Vinny needs. A classic example of know thy enemy. Vinny then uses his knowledge of his enemies against them. A dirty man, and he takes advantage of an old lady as well, just so he can accomplish his goals. So that shows what some people are capable of, I suppose, and what because by the dirty man, he had dirty windows, and he took pictures of that, and then he shames the dirty man in front of the crowd, in front of the judge. So he uses shame in order to and evidence of that shameful act, or that thing that person finds shameful, to be able to not blackmail him, but you could imagine, if you extrapolate into the real world, how someone could use photographs of someone's thing or an activity someone taking part in order to make them do what they want and say what they need them to say in order to make a certain case go a certain way, let's say. There's a focus on car tyres as well in the court, which is a very subtle way of making people cautious of using a car and car ownership, because clearly owning a car can ruin your life. We see a lot of photos, and Vinny keeps saying our camera will solve the case, and our camera is really important, driving home that message from about 5 minutes ago in the film about how their lives would be improved with CCTV. And we also get treated to a domestic at a cafe, and then whilst they're angry, so they're angry on screen, Lisa leaves angry, Vinny's angry at the door of the cafe. Whilst we see that, and the fight's taking place, in big letters on the wall is the word stew, right? Which is a way to subtly teach people to not solve your problems, but instead you should fester and wallow in that anger. And then the film starts to play up the idea as well of genetic memory. So all of Lisa's family, back to her grandparents on both sides, and mechanics, including like 4 uncles, 2 granddads, do you know what I mean? So that means that she's inherited their knowledge and understanding of cars and their engines. And we also then see Lisa being unhelpful, basically, and she, all through the film, she's wanted to help, but now that she has the chance to help, she's being obtuse, and she's purposely making herself not answer, and she's looking away and being difficult, almost like some sort of spell's been cast over her in the court, or to show that these handlers of CIA assets, if you like, when it comes down to it, unless you can trick them into admitting that's what they've been doing, maybe it's to teach people that, if it comes down to it, your CIA handler isn't going to look out for you. They don't have the best interests of you at heart. They're going to tell you they do. They're going to tell you they want to help you, and they're going to help you, and they're there for you. And then when it comes down to actually needing them, and in front of a court and in front of all these other people, they're just going to turn their nose away and be like, no, nothing to do with me, this. Do you know what I mean? We then watch the characters be saved by a disposable camera, and a disposable camera is probably the first step towards a permanent camera, a digital camera, video cameras, phones, smartphones, cameras constantly. We also see how the effective sharing of information between police forces over state lines is helpful to the case in order to free the 2 characters who have been in prison. Something that would also be really helpful in getting more people arrested, though, and sent to prison to work for pennies in their factories. The film also seems like a good way of convincing people that bringing more power to police and more technology to them to interact and share data would be in the public's best interest. And then we also see at the end how the CIA handler, having other assets around the country, is useful because in making their goals complete, because the CIA handler, Marisa Tomei, called Lisa in the film, she makes a call to another asset of hers, which is disguised as a friend of Vinny's, in a court in New York, gets him to say certain things and fax over a bit of information, false information, to send lies and manipulate the whole situation to keep herself safe and keep him safe, so that she can continue operating as a CIA handler, potentially, if that's what this film is secretly about. Because she's got the goal in this, her overall goal in this is portrayed as she wants to get married to Vinny. But you've got to extrapolate from that. She's a CIA handler. She wants Vinny to complete this objective. But to be able to complete that objective, he's got this other thing going on. So if she helps him with this other thing and removes these other obstacles from his life and makes his life easier, he's going to be much, much more willing and able to be able to complete her prime directive, possibly. And she moves... going back to the chessboard, she's moving her chess pieces in order to accomplish that goal by calling in a contact across state lines to be able to help Vinny pretend to be someone that he's not. And that's it. That's all the notes I made on My Cousin Vinny. So I don't know what you thought of that. I don't know if you thought there was a lot of hidden messages there. It did seem to be about more like CIA operatives and that towards the end. I enjoyed the film. It's worth a watch. I don't want to keep you too long now. We're getting close to the end. So thank you for watching, if this has made it to a video version, if I have managed to do that. Thank you for listening. If you've listened on Spotify, leave a rating, 5 stars if you can on Spotify or Apple. Leave a review if you can. Leave a comment on Spotify. If you leave a rating, it helps me reach more people, because then the music and the podcasts that you listen to, I imagine, get categorized and collected by Spotify if you've got an account on there. And then because you've listened to 3 shows and one of them's mine, I might then get promoted to the people that listen to them other 2 shows that you listen to. So it all helps. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you've watched this live on Patreon, you've done it without saying hello the whole time, but hopefully you've enjoyed this. I don't know if it was any good. I really don't. I don't know what to expect from the feedback of this, because it's been so long since I've done one. But I'll fucking see you in a bit, guys. Thank you for listening.